The private dining room at Marcello's was exactly what my parents wanted for their 40th anniversary. Elegant, expensive, and packed with people to impress. 20 guests sat around the long table draped in cream linen, crystal glasses catching candlelight, while my mother held court at one end and my father beamed at the other. I'd flown in from a 72-hour shift. My hands still ached from the double bypass I'd performed that morning, a complicated case that had taken 6 hours of meticulous work. But I'd made it. I always made it to family events even when they barely noticed I was there. "Everyone, this is my older sister, Sarah," my sister Melissa announced when her new boyfriend and his parents arrived late. She was 28, 3 years younger than me, and worked in pharmaceutical sales. Our parents treated her like she'd discovered the cure for cancer itself every time she hit her quarterly targets. Melissa's arms swept toward me with theatrical flair, her wine sloshing dangerously close to the rim. "Sarah works at a hospital. Files paperwork at some clinic, processes patient forms, that sort of thing. Administrative stuff." Polite smiles appeared around the table. Her boyfriend Marcus nodded sympathetically. His parents, Dr. and Mrs. Chin, exchanged a glance I couldn't quite read. "Important work," Marcus's mother said carefully. "Medical facilities need good administrative support." "Right." Melissa laughed, squeezing Marcus's hand. "I keep telling her she should try to move up, maybe get into actual healthcare, but she seems happy just, shuffling papers. Some people aren't ambitious, and that's okay too." My father nodded along, raising his wine glass. "Sarah's always been content with simple work. Not everyone needs to chase big careers." My mother added, "She works such long hours though. All that overtime filing must be exhausting." She said it with genuine sympathy, which somehow made it worse. I cut into my salmon, saying nothing. I'd learned years ago that correcting them only led to accusations of showing off or making things awkward. Better to let them believe their comfortable narrative. I had my own life, one they'd never bothered to ask about. "I mean, no offense, Sarah," Melissa continued, emboldened by the wine and attention, "but when you're still doing entry-level work at 31, you have to wonder if maybe you just didn't apply yourself. Marcus here is already a senior analyst at Goldman Sachs. At 29. Scattered applause. Marcus grinned. My mother beamed at him like he was already her son-in-law. "Some of us peak early, some of us peak late, and some of us—" Melissa trailed off with a meaningful shrug, letting the implication hang. Dr. Chin, Marcus's father, had been quiet through dinner. Now he was staring at me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. He was older, distinguished, with silver threading through his dark hair. Something about his expression had changed. He leaned forward slightly. "Sarah, forgive me, but which hospital do you work at?" "Metropolitan General," I said simply. His eyes widened. His wife's hand froze halfway to her wine glass. "And what exactly do you do there?" His voice was different now, sharper, more focused. The table had gone quiet. Melissa looked annoyed at losing her spotlight. My parents watched with mild curiosity, probably expecting me to mumble something about the filing department. I met Dr. Chen's gaze directly. "Chief cardiovascular surgeon." The silence was profound and immediate. Someone's knife scraped against china, the sound painfully loud. Melissa's champagne flute slipped from her fingers, shattering against her plate in an explosion of glass and pale gold liquid. The crash made everyone jump. "You're Dr. Sarah Mitchell?" Dr. Chin stood abruptly, his chair scraping backward. His face had gone pale, then flushed. "You're the Dr. Mitchell?" My mother's mouth hung open. My father had stopped mid-chew. "You performed the emergency coronary bypass on my daughter," Dr. Chin continued, his voice thick with emotion. "Last December. She came in coding, massive heart attack at 24 years old. They told us she had minutes. You operated for 8 hours straight." His wife gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my God. Emily. You saved Emily." "The surgical team saved Emily," I corrected quietly. "I just let it." "Don't," Dr. Chin said firmly. "Don't minimize it. The attending told us you refused to leave even after your shift ended. You stayed because you knew her case inside and out. You made decisions that—" His voice cracked. "You gave us our daughter back." Melissa sat frozen, champagne dripping from the tablecloth onto her designer dress. She didn't seem to notice. "You're the chief of cardiovascular surgery?" Marcus said slowly, like he was trying to solve an equation that didn't make sense. At Metropolitan General? That's one of the top cardiac programs in the country. Wait, my mother whispered. Chief? You're in charge of, you're a surgeon? For 6 years, I said. Chief for 2. My father's face had cycled through several colors. But you said, when we asked about your work, you said you dealt with paperwork. I do, I replied evenly. Patient charts, surgical protocols, department budgets, research grant applications, peer review submissions. Lots of paperwork. You assumed that meant filing. I never corrected you. Why wouldn't you tell us? Melissa's voice was small now, stripped of its earlier confidence. I tried actually, I said, my tone calm despite the pounding in my chest. When I finished my residency 7 years ago, Dad cut me off to talk about your new sales territory. When I made chief, Mom was on the phone and said she had to go because you needed help picking out a dress. I sent you all the announcement from the hospital newsletter. None of you mentioned it. The table was utterly silent except for the soft jazz playing through the restaurant speakers. Dr. Chin was still standing, looking at my parents with something between shock and disapproval. You don't know your daughter is one of the most respected cardiac surgeons on the East Coast? She published a groundbreaking study on minimally invasive valve replacement, Mrs. Chin added quietly. I read it in the New England Journal of Medicine. Her techniques have been adopted in hospitals worldwide. We. My mother couldn't form words. Last year alone, Dr. Chin continued, his voice gaining strength. Dr. Mitchell performed over 200 open-heart surgeries with a survival rate that exceeds national averages by 17%. She's been headhunted by Johns Hopkins, Mayo Clinic and Cleveland Clinic. She turned them all down. Melissa made a choking sound. Marcus had gone very still, clearly reassessing everything he thought he knew about his girlfriend's family. The medical community knows exactly who Dr. Sarah Mitchell is, Dr. Chin said, looking directly at my parents. It's remarkable that her own family doesn't. My father set down his fork with a trembling hand. Sarah, sweetheart, I don't understand. Why didn't you just tell us? I did tell you, I said quietly. You didn't hear me. There's a difference. But we're your family, Melissa whispered, tears starting to stream down her face, cutting tracks through her makeup. We should have known. I should have. Oh God, what I said about you not applying yourself. You said what you believed, I replied. Based on assumptions you never questioned. My mother was crying now too, mascara ruining her carefully applied makeup. We've been so proud of Melissa's sales numbers. We've been bragging to everyone about her quarterly bonuses. And you've been saving lives. Children's lives, Mrs. Chin added softly. Adults. Emily was our only daughter. Our miracle. And Dr. Mitchell gave her a future. The weight of their ignorance settled over the table like a shroud. Other diners were starting to notice the commotion, whispering behind menus. How many hours a week do you work? Marcus asked suddenly, his financial analyst brain clearly doing calculations. Usually around 90, I said. More during crisis periods. And we thought you were doing overtime filing, my father said hollowly. We felt sorry for you. Dr. Chin sat back down slowly, still looking at me with something like reverence. Dr. Mitchell, I cannot adequately express what you mean to my family. Emily is thriving. She's finishing her master's degree. She's getting married next year. Because of you. I'm glad, I said honestly. That's why I do this work. Not for recognition, Mrs. Chin observed. Not for your family's approval. You do it because you're called to it. I nodded. That was exactly it. Melissa pushed back from the table abruptly, nearly knocking over another glass. Excuse me. She fled toward the bathroom, shoulders shaking. Marcus looked torn between following her and staying to hear more. He stayed. The hospital just offered me department head of the entire surgical division, I said into the silence. I haven't decided yet. It would mean less time in the OR, more administrative work. Actually administrative work, not the imaginary kind you thought I did. Will you take it? Dr. Chin asked. I don't know, I admitted. I became a surgeon to operate, not to manage. But I could shape protocols that save more lives across all departments. Whatever you decide, he said firmly, it will be the right choice. Your judgment is impeccable. My parents sat in stunned silence. The waiter approached cautiously to refill water glasses, clearly sensing the tension. "I have early rounds tomorrow," I said, checking my watch. It was nearly 10. "I should go." "Sarah, please." My mother reached for my hand across the table. "Don't leave like this. We need to talk. We need to understand." "There's nothing to understand, Mom," I said gently, standing. "You believed what was convenient. What fit your narrative." I stopped fighting it because it was exhausting. "But we love you," she insisted, tears flowing freely now. "I know you do," I said. "But love without interest, without curiosity, without actually seeing the person in front of you, that's not enough." I pulled cash from my wallet, enough to cover my portion of the meal and then some, and set it on the table. "Dr. Mitchell," Dr. Chin stood again. "Would you have lunch with my wife and me sometime? And Emily when she's back from her semester abroad. She's wanted to thank you personally, but we weren't sure if it would be appropriate." "I'd like that," I said, meaning it. I pulled out one of my cards, the ones with all my credentials, the ones I'd never bothered giving my family because they'd never asked for one, and handed it to him. "My direct line is on there." He took it reverently like it was something precious. Marcus stared at the card. "You went to Johns Hopkins for med school. Stanford for undergrad. Those are full academic scholarships," I finished. "Yes." My father made a sound like he'd been punched. I picked up my coat from the back of my chair. Through the window I could see Melissa in the bathroom area, face buried in her hands, her whole body shaking with sobs. "Happy anniversary," I said to my parents. "Truly, 40 years is an achievement." I walked out of Marcello's into the cool evening air. My phone buzzed immediately, a text from the hospital. "A trauma case coming in, multiple vehicle collision, possible cardiac involvement. They wanted to know if I was available." I texted back, 20 minutes. Because this was who I was. Not the invisible daughter they'd created in their minds. Not the paper pusher they'd pitted. I was Dr. Sarah Mitchell, and somewhere in the city someone needed me to be exactly that. Behind me, through the restaurant windows, I could see my family's anniversary dinner falling apart. Tomorrow they'd call. They'd apologize, try to rebuild, ask 1,000 questions they should have asked years ago. Maybe I'd answer. Maybe I wouldn't. But tonight I had a life to save. And that mattered more than their belated recognition ever could.